Former President Donald Trump is off the campaign trail today, but in a preview of what may come in his first debate with his Democratic opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris, next Tuesday, Trump is sounding off about the federal election subversion case and a heck of a lot more. CNN's Steve Contorno is joining us now. What are we hearing from Donald Trump, and what clues does this give us as to what's going to be said during the debate?
Well, Trump discussing the new charges filed against him by special agent or special counsel Jack Smith in response to that Supreme Court ruling on immunity, and Trump suggesting that he had, quote, every right to interfere in the counting and the results of the 2020 election. Take a listen to what he said.
It's so crazy that my poll numbers go up. Whoever heard you get indicted for interfering with a presidential election where you have every right to do it? You get indicted and your poll numbers go up.
Elsewhere in that interview, he also said that Vice President Harris was nasty, and that's his direct word, in her previous debates against Vice President Mike Pence. The irony there, of course, is that Mike Pence is not endorsing Donald Trump this go around, and Trump supporters actually stormed the Capitol, some of them saying, hang Mike Pence on January 6th. So the choice of words there is quite notable. I also want to point out that over the weekend, he did respond to the news that several of the hostages had been killed by Hamas. And he said, quote, that there was a total lack of leadership by the Biden-Harris administration on that front. He also linked it back to his own legal cases and saying that because they are focusing on, quote, weaponizing the Justice Department against him, they didn't take care of business on these foreign affairs. Sarah.
Steve Contorno, thank you so much for your reporting there. We appreciate you this morning. John?
All right, with us now, Democratic strategist Matt Bennett and CNN senior political commentator Scott Jennings. Matt, I just want to start very quickly with what Donald Trump said, because I can think of a time when Joe Biden was still a Democratic nominee where Donald Trump saying, I had every right to interfere in the election, might become a big deal in the election. How much do you think election interference in his attempts to overturn the results are playing right now?
Yeah, to your point, John, it's very clear that the Harris campaign has not made that a central plank in their argument in this race. And I think that's probably wise. The Biden campaign ran on that in 2020, and it worked, the restoring the soul of America. I think what we were seeing by the end of the kind of Biden run here was that was no longer resonating as deeply as it had been. It's amazing. I mean, Trump is threatening essentially a coup and saying that he had a right to take away America's most fundamental democratic rights, but it just doesn't seem to land with voters. So I think Harris is smart to make this a future-oriented campaign, to warn voters that Trump is extraordinarily dangerous. Project 2025 is a 900-page blueprint that would fundamentally alter the country, but not to focus as much on that particular issue.
Yeah, on the other hand, Scott, when he's talking about having the right to interfere with the election, he's not talking about inflation or immigration, right?
Yeah, I mean, what I assume he means is he has a right to challenge results that he thinks are unfair, which he did have a right to do that and would again. What you don't have a right to do is go beyond that and beyond what the courts allow you to do. So hopefully we don't see a repeat of what happened in the last election. I mean, look, his best opportunity to win the election is to have voters view Kamala Harris as an extension of Joe Biden and an extension of more of the same. I mean, that's his best opportunity, particularly when it comes to the economy. I know that when they're talking about the economy, they are winning. That is just going to be an immutable fact, whether it's in the debate or whether it's in the weeks after the debate. So hopefully he knows that and executes on it. That's what Republicans want to see him do.
So Matt, if Scott is right in that tying Vice President Harris to Joe Biden is a winning strategy for Donald Trump, how useful is it for the Harris campaign to have Joe Biden out for them today in Pittsburgh?
Well, if there's one constituency that loves Joe Biden, it's organized labor. It's Labor Day. Biden speaks to that world in really authentic ways, and it's always worked well. So I think it's smart to put him out there. And the vice president has not tried to distance herself from Biden in any way. We saw that in the CNN interview last week. what she's going to do is talk about her plan for the future, because elections are about the future and not the past. So she's not going to dwell too much on the things that she and Biden have done, but she's not going to try to in any way, push Biden aside. And I think it's important to note that there has been a real consolidation around Harris in ways that we weren't seeing with Biden earlier, in some constituencies even that Trump is strong in. I mean, we're showing far less weakness with white male voters, for instance, than we were before she took over the race.
Let me, if we can get in the control, the ABC News poll has a vote preference by gender. It deals with the gender gap here, and it's very interesting. If you look at these numbers from the ABC News poll, well, no, that wasn't this number. This is among likely voters. You can see Vice President Harris is up 6 among likely voters. She's up 4 among registered voters. The numbers I'm looking at right now talk about vote preference by gender. There you go. You can see that pre-convention among women, she had a 6-point lead. Post-convention with women, it's a 13-point lead. And among men, a little bit of a shift in the Trump direction, but not a statistically significant one. She trails now among men by 5 points. Before the convention, it was 3 points. But that chasm among women, Scott, how problematic is that for Trump?
Well, it's problematic if you don't maximize the other side of it, which is, I guess, the male gender gap. As you pointed out, Trump leads among men, Harris leads among women. There are more women than men in the country, so I'm only moderately good at math, but you can see how it would fundamentally work out. I mean, but it is true. We are heading, I think, towards a huge gender gap in this election. It doesn't mean Trump can't win on it, but you do have to then find those votes elsewhere, and so it's kind of fascinating. I mean, if you look at the two characteristics in this country that best determine how you're going to vote, it's gender and educational attainment. That was true for the last several years, but it's very true right now. So it's that working class men versus college-educated women sort of cohorts that probably are most divergent in the data that you're looking at.
But among women, Matt, it's getting better for Kamala Harris, at least according to the polls. If you look at it, is there a why behind that, do you think?
Well, I think there's a whole bunch of things. First of all, women do not like the fact that Donald Trump bragged about getting rid of reproductive rights and changes his view on that in the course of a single sentence. I mean, who knows where he stands anymore on those things, although we do know fundamentally what his party wants to do because we've got the blueprint in Project 2025. The other thing that women are very concerned about, like all voters, they're worried about the economy, and they certainly don't like the idea of 20% across the board tariffs that would immediately increase prices. I mean, the idea that Trump is going to lower prices is exactly backwards. All of his plans would increase prices, and that really worries women.
Scott, Donald Trump has had a heck of a journey on abortion and reproductive rights over the course of his life, but he had a heck of a journey over a 24-hour period, Thursday and Friday. I think where he ended up, that he's going to vote no on Amendment 4 in Florida, which would overturn the 6-week abortion ban there, though. The idea of the confusion around his position on Friday, how much of a mark does that leave going forward?
I'm not really confused at all by his position, to be honest with you. Look, he obviously doesn't have very, very strong personal feelings about it. He never has, as you pointed out. He's been more moderate on it than some ardent pro-lifers probably personally want him to be. He does have a record as president. He operated a pro-life administration. Directionally, he's a pro-life guy who's going to have a pro-life administration. Directionally, Kamala Harris is pro-abortion, and she'll have a pro-abortion administration. His position is no different, as I understand it, than Ronald Reagan, which is he's pro-life. He believes in some reasonable limits. He also believes in the 3 exceptions of rape, incest, and life of the mother. And he's been a strong supporter of IVF, no matter what any of Kamala Harris's surrogates want to say about it or lie about it repeatedly, hour by hour on cable television. So he's got what I think is actually a pretty moderate mainstream position. And again, in the Republican Party, there are some people who want him to go further. And in the Democratic Party, there are some people who think he's gone too far. Also, one other issue on this thing. In the next administration, no bill banning abortion can pass the U.S. Senate. He's never going to have to deal with this as president. And so this is largely going to be left to the states, and he's expressed his personal preferences about it, and I think his personal preferences are kind of center cut for most Americans. Reasonable limits, 3 exceptions, support IVF. That's a mainstream view.
All right, Matt Bennett, Scott Jennings, thank you both for being here.